One afternoon, just after lunchtime, Bear was backing down onto the express. Normally Gordon would have taken it, but the express engine was still being rebuilt at the works, following his accident with the lorry. As he was coupled up, Bear spotted the Fat Controller waiting on the platform. He knew why she was there. Alice was supposed to have been taking this run, but she'd been delayed on her previous trip.
Excuse me, Mom.
The Fat Controller strode over.
Yes, Bear?
I'm not going to be back in time for the Foskers to Barrow.
Bear had been getting ready to take that train when he'd been asked to take the express.
Alice will take it up when she gets back here.
As Bear departed, the Fat Controller watched him thoughtfully. James, Alice, Henry and Bear had been doing a good job of looking after the express since Gordon's accident with the lorry last month, but it wasn't the first time there'd been a last-minute change like this. Only last week, Patrick had had to take the express when James had been delayed at the container yard. The Fat Controller knew her engines were doing their best, but there simply weren't enough of them to go around. Something, she thought, would have to be done.
Did I see you taking a goods train earlier, Alice?
Patrick asked, as he returned to the sheds that evening.
Yes, I'm afraid Bear had the cover for my express run.
Alice replied, and she explained about her earlier delay.
Unfortunately, we're all rather busy.
Indeed,
James added, thinking of his own delay.
I mean, we're all doing what we can.
but it's not enough. Hopefully Gordon will be back soon.
Before any of the other engines could reply, a car pulled up next to the sheds. The Fat Controller climbed out, and she joined the engines a moment later.
Good evening, engines. As you know, there have been a few delays and incidents for the express lately.
We were just talking about that, Mom. Do you know when Gordon will be back from the steamworks?
I've just spoken to the director of the steamworks. I'm afraid he won't be back until mid or late July.
The engines' faces fell. That wouldn't be for another 3 months or so.
Engines, I know all of you are doing your best to look after the express on top of your regular trains, but it has become clear to me that we need another engine to stand in for Gordon until he gets back.
Does that mean Pip and Emma will be visiting again?
The Fat Controller smiled, but before she could reply, the sound of a steam whistle drifted through the air. Alice gasped.
I know that whistle, I think.
He's come non-stop from Darlington.
The visitor stopped on the turntable a moment later.
This is Tornado. He's here thanks to the A1 Steam Locomotive Trust. I trust you'll make him feel welcome.
The other engines looked closely at him. Like Gordon, he was a Pacific-type locomotive with large driving wheels. He actually bore a bit of resemblance to their absent friend.
Welcome to the railway.
It's nice to meet you all.
As Tornado turned on the turntable, James noticed that Alice seemed to be a little put out.
Are you alright, Alice?
I'm just a bit confused, James.
Alice looked closely at Tornado as he backed into the shed.
You're one of Peppercorn's A1s, aren't you?
That's correct.
I didn't think any of you had been preserved.
Tornado frowned sadly.
I'm afraid none of my brothers were. That's why I was built.
What do you mean?
The A1 Steam Locomotive Trust was formed in 1990 to build and operate a Peppercorn A1 locomotive for use on the main line and preserved railways. You're that engine? Yes, I was only completed last year.
Do you mean that this is the first time you'll be in full revenue service?
Yes, I've only really pulled excursions and rail tours before. I'm looking forward to it though.
You won't have to wait too long, Tornado. I'd like you to take the Wildnorwester tomorrow morning.
Certainly, Mom.
Early the next morning, Tornado arrived at Knapford Station to take the morning express. A crowd of rail fans was gathered on the platform, and enthusiasts had spotted Tornado heading for the sheds last night, and word had quickly spread via online forum. Cameras snapped, and rail fans crowded round the engine. On the next platform over, Duck was watching all the activity, quite bemused. After all, seeing a steam engine on Sodor was hardly unusual.
Gordon doesn't usually draw a crowd like that.
I must admit, I don't really understand it myself.
Before Duck could reply, the guard's whistle rang out. The rail fans scrambled for their seats in the coaches. A few moments later, Tornado pulled forward eagerly. Smoothly and steadily, the heavily loaded express began moving forward. Tornado quickly accelerated, rapidly bringing his train up to speed. As he cruised along the line, he couldn't help grinning. This was what he'd been built for. He made good time along the line, and soon reached Croven's Gate. After gently braking his train to a halt, Tornado glanced around curiously. He'd only caught a brief glimpse of the station and the little engines when he'd passed through last night.
When are we due to leave, driver?
Not for another 2 minutes. We are a little bit early. A few minutes later, the last of the waiting passengers had boarded.
Is that it?
Tornado's driver shot a glance down the platform. I can't see any more passengers. Sure enough, the guard's whistle sounded out a moment later. Tornado frowned as he moved off. It had seemed like a straightforward stop, but he couldn't help thinking that he'd forgotten something. Tornado had forgot something. His stop at Croven's Gate was supposed to be a guaranteed connection with one of the Skarloey Railway's passenger trains. Unfortunately, Peter Sam had been delayed at the previous station. The little engine whistled frantically as he approached the station, but it was no good. By the time he reached the platform, Tornado and the express were disappearing into the distance.
You forgot to wait for me. Where will the passengers be now?
A short while later, Tornado arrived at Barrow, a good 10 minutes early. As he brought the train to a halt, he spotted the station master waiting there. Tornado, I've received an email from Miss Hart.
Oh, what would that be?
She asked me to remind you that your stop at Croven's Gate is a guaranteed connection with the Skarloey Railway's trains. Tornado's face fell.
Guaranteed connection?
That's partly my fault, said the guard, who had strode up during the conversation. I heard one of the Skarloey engines approaching as we were pulling in. I assumed it was their connection. Don't worry, I'll clear it with the controller.
Thank you.
Even so, as he headed off to turn around, Tornado couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed. A few hours later, Tornado was returning to the sheds. His return run had been uneventful, and he'd made sure to wait for his connection at Croven's Gate this time. He stopped under the water tower, and his fireman began filling his tank.
How did your run go, Tornado?
Alright, I suppose.
Just alright? Come on, what happened?
Tornado explained about his missed connection at Croven's Gate.
It's a little embarrassing. I mean, we engines do have a responsibility to know what's going on with our trains.
I know, but it was the first time you'd taken the express. I wouldn't stress about it too much.
If you say so.
Tornado replied, still downcast. He had wanted to make a good first impression.
You're not the only engine who's had an incident like this.
If it makes you feel any better, Tornado, I also messed up on my first day here back in '96.
Both Tornado and Henry looked over at where Peter the heavy goods engine was resting in the sheds.
It's Peter, isn't it?
That's right. I look after the heavy goods trains with Patrick, usually taking the ones running straight through to Vickerstown or Barrow-in-Furness.
I see.
On my first day here, there was a bit of a miscommunication in the yard. I ended up taking James's train, and he had to take mine. It was a bit heavier than his, and he couldn't make it over Gordon's Hill.
What happened?
Oh, he split the train and took it over the hill in halves. We only figured out what had happened in the sheds later that night. Anyway, Tornado, My point is that it's not being held against me. You've got nothing to worry about.
Exactly. Once an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. He went into a tunnel, squeaked through his funnel, and wouldn't come out again.
Is that a local poem?
Oh, it's a nursery rhyme based on a true story.
If I may say so, that engine sounds rather silly.
Yeah, that engine was me. And I was a lot younger too. We all make mistakes when we're young and inexperienced, Tornado. At least you didn't deliberately cause trouble. We can see you're doing your best, and I'm sure you'll do well here.
Henry had a point, Tornado thought. After all, he fully intended to learn from his mistakes. As he backed into the sheds, Tornado couldn't help agreeing with Henry. After all, the other engines had made him feel welcome last night, and as Henry had said, he was doing his best. Yes, Tornado thought, he had a feeling he was going to enjoy his time on the Northwest Railway.